I need you to go on an extended monologue.
So you can take out your casserole.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the beginning of our podcast. Welcome to the
Yes.
Footnotes podcast, where we go over major footnotes in a week. We're back for a June and Paul exclusive episode.
Yeah.
I think the Sam Wu episode was quite interesting. I enjoyed having him on, and hopefully he's going to follow us and listen along. And we might have him back too.
Hopefully more interesting guests in the future.
Yes. Not that he wasn't interesting, but
yeah, but
more of these interesting guests.
Yes, just like Sam.
Yes. So June, I'm sure it's been a tiring week for you. It's definitely been one for me. First week of med school. What's been on your mind? What's been going on?
I mean, we started our real week of classes past orientation week. We've had tutorials, had an anatomy lab. It's all very familiar to me, the structure and the style of learning. We've had a lot of time to do whatever, so like we hosted a party this week at our house. I went to another party. I also was at another party on Monday, so like I have, I guess, not been studying so much, but studying other things, studying life. Yeah. I did want to share one interesting experience. So on Labor Day, so this past Monday, a friend of a friend was hosting a party at his house. He's like a DJ, so he likes having things like in his backyard. It was like a backyard party, and then it's kind of close to my house. It's in East End, Hamilton, and there were a lot of people, that I don't, let's say, normally associate with. It was definitely people outside the McMaster University bubble. So a lot of interesting Hamiltonians. It wasn't a huge party, maybe 10 or like 12 people stopped by in total. But there were some very interesting characters there. Well, I guess I could tell you about maybe two or three of them. So one of them, he seemed like a nice dude. I really enjoyed his company. And then he started drinking more and more, and then started to say some, let's say, weird shit.
Okay.
One of the things he started saying, he kind of looked into my eyes, just like, 100% serious. He was like, "You're part of the Bin family, aren't you?" It's like, I know, yeah, you friggin' Asians, like, trying to like take over, and like you've already taken over, Toronto, and like you're coming for Hamilton next. It's like I wasn't exactly sure what he was talking about, but it sounds like I don't know, something like a Asian conspiracy to take hold of to take hold of Toronto or the regions of Canada. And I thought that was interesting. That was like very.
I'm not sure if interesting is the word, June.
I
think that's just kind of, well, it's weird. It's very weird. And it's even weirder that he did that when, like, this is the first time you met.
Yeah, well, he was pretty intoxicated at that point, so
Okay.
makes sense. But I mean, that's just one sample, but that kind of got me thinking about the kind of, let's say, political views or other beliefs that aren't quite as represented, or we don't get to see quite often, because there is a underlying, like, let's say, political pattern or socioeconomic pattern that's been sort of brewing in our culture for maybe the past 10, 20 years. And if I could try to capture that, it might be something like a lot of jobs, let's say manufacturing wise, have been lost. So like a lot of the work in suburban, rural America, Canada has been outsourced to China, India. So a lot of people who had their livelihoods from those sources, essentially taken away. One of the biggest examples local is Hamilton steel manufacturing, how that's gone, downhill, and all the jobs and all the people who've had their livelihoods like attached to it. It's all gone downhill from there, and kind of the consequences of that, have been a lot of poverty in Hamilton, a lot of social issues. So there's that aspect, and then combine that with a tide of immigration, part of it leading to unsustainable housing bubbles, and there's other factors involved, like how costs of living have definitely been going up, and on top of that, there's a big political movement from the left, like emphasizing diversity and multiculturalism and all these things, and I guess the last piece may be a distrust of traditional media. Like I'm thinking the major news channels like CNN or the New York Times or those big, let's say, institutions of journalism. I think a lot of people have been losing their faith in those traditional news sources and have resorted to, I mean, on the internet, you can find definitely like so many sources of information, some more biased and some more, let's say, inaccurate or speculative than others. So, in response to all those things I've kind of mentioned, I threw a lot, but I do think there is a significant portion of people who are distrustful of, mainstream media and have, a range of different sources for their information now. A kind of, let's say, resentment at that they were caught up and swept up in these global economic forces, and that one of the things I think he mentioned was like coming out of high school or something, he's just barely got by, with decent grades, and then you're competing with all these Asians with 97 averages, and they all have 14 different extracurriculars, and so I think there is a pattern there in terms of forming the kind of distrustful and maybe little resentful political identity. And that's at a, let's say, point where a significant number of those kind of people are Trump supporters. Like thinking about like their lives and like, seeing someone, let's say, like that, I don't know if it was a representation of that, but that kind of bursted my bubble a little bit and say like, hey, like that's a lot of people are like this and you don't know them. They may represent something like 30, 40, 50% of the population. You've just never been exposed yet.
Right.
That was one dude, and there were other dudes there that I found really interesting. One guy, he works as a nurse, but before, like, he had a pretty rough childhood and like some issues in his family. He was involved in, there's a big Italian like mafia presence in Hamilton, or there was like, it used to be more prominent. He was involved in that, sold drugs in high school, and telling us stories about like how if some group of people crossed them, then like a bunch of like super jacked, I guess Italian dudes, in high school, just all get out of a van, like 40 people rushing out of this small van, and then they go like head to head with like those scenes of a war where like two armies are like butting heads against each other, just like marching towards one another. Like that's kind of the scene he described, but like in his high school, basically.
Right.
It's the kids you were taught not to associate with in high school, right? So it's, but he's kind of cleaned up his life and severed whatever connections needed to be severed, and he's like doing really good work as a nurse now. He's very competent. Yeah, but like seeing those kind of people really helped burst my bubble a bit and think about what the real Hamilton is like. Another thing that reminded me of the bubble was there was, I think it was one of our assistant deans of the program, and no, it was someone who helps us deal with. It was a physician who talks about financial independence. And then he came and basically told us that, like, all of you sitting in this room, if you work full-time hours, will be in the top 1% of like the Canadian income bracket, which is like, that's absurd. Like every single person in that room is part of the 1%. Without kind of knowing it yet. And that means the path we chose, the paths we took to get here, and the people that we've been surrounded by are likely part of, that very small, let's say, portion of the population. So I kind of gave me the need to meet more people that I haven't met before, get to know more of the real side of Hamilton. And I've been thinking about that since the beginning of the week.
It's really cool. And yeah, I've had similar thoughts when I was in Hamilton and even in London, actually. As you walk away, so yeah, there are so many ideas and so many experiences that we don't have access to. Like you mentioned, we're part of this bubble, and I think I've been wondering of how we can pop the bubble, and how we can pop the bubble effectively, genuinely, and safely. So, there's a lot of initiatives here and there where you can go and work in the community, and you can meet people and get to hear people's experiences and their life stories. And if all of those are always genuine or if those are realistic, because you're sort of in a role when you partake in that. So for example, if you were to work at a food bank, let's say you're volunteering at a food bank and you're helping feed the homeless, your role is sort of this helping role, and you're there to assist them and to provide food. Of course, the people who are getting food from you would be interacting with you probably differently than them interacting with other people that they know, like on the streets or things like that. So we never really get to experience what it's like to be in their shoes, because we're always, wherever we go, we're always in the bubble. We're always in the bubble. We can't escape that bubble. And it might be good for our safety, but we don't get as authentic of an experience. Now, my question to you is, what are you looking to understand, and what are you trying to gain from knowing the stories of these other people and getting their perspective? What is your end goal?
That's a big question.
If you have one.
Yeah. What is my?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've thought about it in terms of my end goal.
So it sounds like you're just very interested, and when you hear these stories, there's something about it that's new, and not just new, but there's a common thread in there that draws you in. Like there's human experience which you can empathize with or you can understand, but it's in a totally different context, right? It's new in that way. So maybe that's intriguing to you or interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, yeah, it is. It's like a set of experiences that I've let's say, never been exposed to, and there's an element that's fascinating about that. Um, and it's not that, you know, all those experiences are like happy or that I'm like really like thrilled to get to know about it. And you know, it's not a kind of like giddy excitement. It's a kind of, it's a mix of like a genuine concern, because like I sense that we've been sheltered from a lot of, yeah, a lot of shit, a lot of um, like there's a lot of pain there. There's a lot of suffering, and or there's, you know, the dude that was hosting the party was telling about us about how it was kind of left that life as well. Started working at a like a fast food joint. Was working way as up. He was kind of acting as the manager person there. Was in talks to, he was making a good salary. Was in talks to maybe open his own branch, and so, you know, kind of that future was getting lined up. But one night, one of his workers wasn't being particularly, let's say, yeah, particularly good when it was a really busy night. He said some like negative feedback, maybe in a little bit harsher way than he anticipated. And a few weeks later, the worker that he criticized and another worker that was kind of envious of him and his position for whatever reason, kind of just reported him to the other manager to get him fired. And so, like, while he was telling the story, he was saying that in this environment, there are so many snakes. You see so many snakes in people. I think that was the term he actually used. That whose intents aren't so obvious. You know, they all have facades, and their underlying intentions is filled with like jealousy and resentment and desire to, you know, backstab people, and they really come at you with a vengeance. You know, he was saying those are the type of people who, you know, who will kind of like punch you and like get, let's say, involved in like a physical altercation at a party, and then they'd run to the police and report that, like, yeah, this guy hit me, and you would go to jail for it. So it seemed to me that, let's say, on the margins of society, on the, you know, on the margins, periphery of society, there are some darker corners that, you know, thankfully we've been protected and sheltered from so far. But it's important to know what's going on.
Well, if I could add, like, I want to mention something. Like, it's these sort of behaviors are not out of this world. Like, they're reasonable, and you can understand why someone would go through that. And for example, someone would lie or backstab someone. Like, there are emotions that and thoughts that you yourself could probably generate, and like reasons as to why you would do things like that. So it's a very slippery slope. Like, you could at any moment you could commit anything that, you know, these people from the margins of society, as you say, are willing to commit, right? There's evil in all of us, essentially. And maybe that's something that's interesting and catches our attention. It's so relatable.
Yeah, it is. It's relatable. I mean, it exists in all of us. The degree to which people act it out is different. I sense that a lot of it has to do with their upbringing and their kind of environment that they're exposed to. The degree to which that was permitted or encouraged, even maybe. But there's more to it that I think I find fascinating about it. Like one of the things is if you're going to be working in Hamilton, um, and when I told the nurse person who was at the party that I want to be like a psychiatrist, you know, he was like, "Yeah, you'll definitely need a lot of them in Hamilton.
Mm.
There's some serious issues
Mm.
that people have, and the more you can kind of relate to and help normalize their experiences and not be like, whoa, it's like to that, the better you can, I guess,
Mm.
relate to them and help them. So that's one part of my motivation to better understand. Um, and it's also like it's interesting you said that those motivations exist like within yourself too.
Mhm.
Like I kind of thought of it as that could definitely be me. Like those I notice all those motivations within me too, like all those resentful thoughts. And if I really thought about it, what kind of actions I could do and might
Mm.
enjoy. But it's like seeing another manifestation of me, but in different circumstances.
Mm.
So yeah, kind of looking into that may help understand myself better, even, uh,
Right.
or have a better understanding of what people, what human beings are like.
Hmm. What I want to mention is that is something you said is that you see this as another manifestation of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a type of thought that most people don't have, or maybe like a lot of people don't have. You know,
Yeah.
when I talk to people outside of medicine in particular, I notice there seems to be a greater dissociation between self and other.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's because there's maybe less agreeableness or less empathy there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I, I see it as I like that. And personally, I'm like you in the sense that I can see myself in other people.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times I wish I didn't because it makes me feel like a dissociated person. Like I don't know who I am because I feel like I have the potential to be so many different people and I see myself in others. So it's like we're all the same. I feel this connection. I don't know if that's coming across properly, if you feel that way as well. But
Uh-huh.
um, I think maybe it's something that you and I definitely have. Is it introspection? Is it just over empathy?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but it definitely helps us, I think, understand ourselves better, even though it is a tougher time. We have a tougher time understanding who we are as an individual compared to others.
Mm-hmm. It something that interested me about what you just said
Hmm.
was I don't know what did you say? You felt like you were like others, or you were some like connected in some way. Like
Right.
what what made you say?
What made me say that? Um, it's so easy for me to understand why people would do something, right? And it's as though I can fire the same neurons that other people fire that led to a certain behavior. So I can think and say, okay, this person probably thought this, had this sort of reaction response, and that led to a behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go through that process myself, it's as though I'm living it. It's as though I'm actually living through that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like I'm that person. That person is a manifestation. It's a potential manifestation of what I could be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's yeah, it's very powerful. Not always in a good way.
The potential, right? I guess the maybe that is a like very. It sounds like a scientific. Well, it's like very rationally consistent. Right?
Hmm.
That the exact same patterns of neural activity could be activated in you. and you could see the process by which that happens. And
Mm-hmm.
you know that's significant because we all, to a point, share the same wiring.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the perspective that I take it from is, I agree. Like there's a sense that we're like all very connected. And the kind of, I don't know. I've been having like these thoughts or like intimations, maybe over the past few weeks, more strongly, that like
Mm-hmm.
when I talk to someone else and I like really like pay attention to them,
Mm-hmm.
it feels as though I'm talking to like another part of myself. It's weird. It's,
Interesting.
yeah, like it feels as though we're participating. We're wearing different masks, but we're from the same source. Like
Mm.
we share a tree, and then we're both different branches of that same tree. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but we happen to be playing different roles and wearing different masks. And maybe I feel like at the end of it, you kind of like unveil your mask, like, haha, it was, you know, the Spider-Man meme, like, you
You.
were you the whole time, like,
Yeah.
wow.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the kind of sense that I've been getting. Sometimes when I have like meaningful conversations with people,
Mm.
it's like you're another expression of like the kind of thing that I am.
Mm.
Yeah. There was one other experience that kind of similar to this. Like one of them, well, it was that same night at the Labor Day Monday, the
Okay.
party. I was just, you know, sitting by the fire. I've had a couple of drinks, so I don't know. In front of the fire, it's very nice. It's very relaxing,
Mm-hmm.
and if you just sit there, kind of like the night is cool. You see the stars, and like it's very beautiful. And I
Mm.
get very introspective when I'm like calm in those environments. And then I felt as though like I could talk to my childhood self.
Mm.
My childhood self was like in some environments, like I can remember some, let's say like camps, or I mean there are like church conferences that I used to go to, and probably in like grade 5, grade 6, there was no one really my age.
Mm.
I kind of followed around the different like tongues and nunas that were
Mm.
there, like the older brothers, sisters. But like I was kind of just doing my own thing like for the whole week, and I was eating alone, and there's just like little June like doesn't know how to quite fit in, um,
Mm.
like going through puberty, and like I think that's a part of me that's a part of my experiences that really stuck with me as this kind of
Mm-hmm.
like unresolved loneliness, let's say, from those like childhood times, or
Mm-hmm.
like, the unresolved desire to be like understood or like played with, like that kid, that like let's say pattern of thoughts or behaviors like still in me, and I felt as I
Mm-hmm.
could like have a conversation with it, and I felt as though like let's say the real me that was speaking was like a older brother figure speaking to like June, my younger brother, and the conversation went something like, yeah, the little brother saying something like, like I was really lonely during that time, like that was really painful, and like the older brother being like, yeah, I know, like you went through a lot, and like I'm sorry that you had to go through that, um, and the younger brother being like, yeah, that was a lot, like thanks for acknowledging it, like I haven't had a chance to talk to you, like, or really say what I wanted for a long time. and then the older brother, like myself, kind of making a promise to this kid, like, you know, I promise that things are gonna get better, that we're gonna have a chance to, like, you know, play and, like, you know, flail around, like release that inner kid of me, like, part of me that I take good care of you. We'll meet like some really great people who you can like connect with. And the third part of like that promise that I found was really interesting was that, like, when you recognize that same kid in other people, like whether it's like actually a kid or like in other people who are grown-ups but who have that same kid inside them, that you'll try to reach out to them and you'll try to help them. It made me think of like the people in my life that I was like kind of ignoring, not messaging, you know, that I had like met in Korea or something, and then I thought they were a bit weird, so I didn't talk to them. And I took a time to like reply to some of them over social media, like that. It's not much, but those are some of the things that it motivated me to do. And I'd kind of forgotten about like this conversation until now, but yeah, that was one of the experiences that I guess contributed to a sense of, I don't know, like connection. Like there's that kid in all of us, or many of us, that I wanted to reach out to them and be like a good older brother to them, like as well as to myself. And that was the way that the little kid inside me was gonna heal. Like it wasn't just like, I don't know, giving him food, or like you heal your own soul by like trying to do that for others, which is like a really weird concept. Like it might be the only one that works. And like I don't know why I believe that, but I do at some level.
I'm taking a moment to take it all in, because I'm having another one of those moments where I feel like I'm like really connecting, really connecting with the experience and personalizing, maybe internalizing the experience. Because when you were talking about it, I could visualize you on a log sitting next to a younger version of you, both looking at a little campfire and having this conversation, and it just made me smile. So it's interesting. I also had this, I had a connection moment very recently too. So I was in Windsor this weekend. I was in Windsor this weekend as part of my orientation week, and you know, a lot of events were going down, and I was really tired and was partying a lot. And for the last night, there was a club night. I decided not to go, and instead I went with a new friend who's in Windsor, who's in the Windsor campus of med school, and he and I just went for drinks, and we went to a pub, and we sat down and had a few beers and started talking. And you know, I really like this guy. He's very down to earth, and he's very real. But we started talking about like our past experiences and our past relationships and stuff like that. And immediately when he started, he had a tough time getting to this point of getting into med school. And the past few years have been very rough on him. I don't want to disclose too much information, but when he was talking about that, I was honed in. I was just so lost in the story, and that whole time I was listening to it, thinking, I hope to God him talking about it helps, and I hope to God that, you know, he understands how much of his experience I'm also experiencing and internalizing and really feeling for myself. And you know, you get like goosebumps, or you get like butterflies in your stomach. I don't know if you ever feel that way, but I definitely do when I hear about another person's story and I understand it, and I relate with it, or I empathize, and I'm able to make the connections. It's such a unique experience, and it's something. Honestly, it's worth every cent. It's worth everything. So yeah, I think your story made me think about that, because I think we all have this longing for connection, right? And some of us more than others, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe sad boys a little more, um, but it's definitely worth chasing. And I'm really glad you took that internal moment to reflect on how important it is to you, and to give yourself a little pat on the back. Um, I've also thought to myself, how far I've come, because like you, I used to be very, introverted and shy, and couldn't get along with a lot of people. I just get along with like one or two people that I knew a little bit, and now I'm trying to go get out there, talk to people, and like it's so tiring. It takes so much out of me, but at the very least, I've gotten to this point, and I look at you, June, and since like first year undergrad, I didn't have a doubt that you were like shy, or like I didn't feel like you were shy is what I'm trying to say. Like I didn't notice that at all.
Hmm.
Um, so obviously, since you were small, like you've been thinking about this, and you've been growing and learning to express yourself and connect with others. So definitely been very fruitful. Um, but yeah, it's always a challenge. Your inner kid's always there, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to have those like moments of connection. I think a lot of it like is influenced by the environment that you're in.
Mhm.
Like you probably won't be having those conversations, I don't know, like at a social gathering in school,
Right.
you know, at the bar, like over a couple drinks, like around like the fire. Like fire is very mysterious. Like, it's the
Hmm.
combination of warmth and that maybe it takes us back to like more primal times when you know families would gather around their fire, and that was kind of the main social
Right.
place.
The smell of fire does something to you too.
Yeah, it's the smell of fire and the environment and
Mm.
everything sets up the conditions for for those things to happen.
Hmm.
um, and alcohol and other drugs to open that up.
Yeah.
I mean, I can share one other experience that I had during this week.
Yeah.
um, I think it was Thursday night, like around 7 or 8 p.m. I think my stomach was unwell. Like I cheated on keto the night before, and then like I coming back to it. I don't know. I had a like keto fat ball, which is like basically a cheesecake
Yeah.
but in a ball. So I wasn't feeling so well. I like my housemates weren't here. I was getting a little more anxious, and then so there are some, let's say, like dark, unresolved feelings, like this tension I was feeling, like in my heart. And
Mm.
then I decided to like, kind of peer into it a little more, and then like I felt as though I was peering into like you know there was like my own pain, but also the pain of like others that I didn't know about. And like it's like the seed of my own like suffering contains like that of everyone else's. If you're
Mm.
willing to look deep enough. Um, anyways, and then like trying to get to like the root of what I was missing. Like I felt as though what was missing was like I need to like, kind of express myself and to try to
Mm.
connect to others. And like I started writing a lot. Because the interesting thing was when I like a year ago when I did start writing and like I was very introspective and open about my experiences. Like I'm sure some people are like, "What the hell is this?" But like some people, message me back and like even with their own reflections, one person saying, they could really relate to like some of the things I was writing about, or that they've been thinking about too, or that it motivated them to become more introspective themselves. And I think I kind of lost sight of that, of opening up more and kind of starting that conversation or dialogue, and that I felt as though like this pain was going to continue, and I would just like wither as a person if I didn't have the chance to do that. So like I'm writing something right now on the need for like connection, like why we've lost it and how we might get it back. And I don't know, hopefully in the next week or something, I can share it in some form.
Very cool. I think you like to turn to writing as your main mode of expression. I think you enjoy that a lot. Yeah.
Like I like speaking too, but there's another quality about writing that I'm very used to. Like,
right.
Maybe high school.
It's very natural to you. Yeah, I don't like writing. Well, I'm not the biggest fan, because I feel like I can talk a lot faster than I write, and I like to think faster than I write.
Right.
I think I just write very slow, even when I'm typing, you know. So it's frustrating, very frustrating. Yeah, maybe that's why I like the stage, you know. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I was gonna ask you to transition to something else, but I guess you were doing it, so keep going.
Oh, no, I actually, it's not going to transition into the thing you think I'm going to transition into. I wanted to talk more about our experience in med school, and I'm going to open up a bit. I'm very overwhelmed. I am extremely overwhelmed, and it's the first time I've been overwhelmed in a very long time.
Yeah.
Especially with school. I don't think I've ever really been that anxious about school. And it might be because I never really, well, in med school, it seems like everyone's doing well, which is something apparently was happening in Hellside, but I didn't ever hear it. Yeah. But all of a sudden now I'm hearing it everywhere. So that definitely adds on to the anxiety. I've resolved that since, because I've decided I'm just going to focus on myself. But there's still the question of, okay, how do I handle so much information thrown at me all at once? There's like 40 pages of pre-reading for tomorrow, and I'm not exaggerating. There are actually 40 pages of social medicine I have to read. So I think the solution that I came up with this week is prioritization. And there's a reason why med school is a pass-fail in Canada, and it is set at 75 or something for Toronto. It's 65 for us, and Western. I think prioritization is key, and I think it's key in the medical field as well. There's some things you just gotta move on from. The difficult thing is, and I think it's a skill that we need to develop, perhaps, is figuring out what is actually important, and that's a skill that I think maybe health sciences has helped us, because it's very inquiry focused and it's self-directed, right? You decide what's important, you learn about it, and you actually remember it and retain it because it's something you're interested in. So I'm trying to apply that here, and I'm having a little bit of difficulty, and maybe I could get your perspective on this as well. But yeah, so this week is going to be me trying to figure out, okay, here are my notes. Here are things that I need to know. What is actually essential, and what will stay with me, and what is actually valuable to me. So I wanted to get your input as well into how it's been for you the first week of medical school, and if it's been stressful and things like that. I'll let you have the floor. You can use it as you wish.
Like that. What you mentioned with all of the reading and things you have to do, that reminded me of the common analogy for what med school is like and what learning in med school is like is trying to drink out of a fire hose. So,
Yeah, we hear that too.
yeah,
Well,
which is like not humanly possible. Um,
uh-huh.
and you know, it's a very different case with Mac, but in most other med schools, you'll be inundated with so much damn information that you know
Mm.
that you're expected to learn or at least be exposed to. Um, and I think that if I were in a more didactic environment, where
Hmm.
you need a passing grade, and like I think the priorities that you set are the most important. Because let's say the priority that you set is to get the best grades in your class. That's
Mm.
it's maybe it's not the best priority, but like it might work for that purpose. Like you
Mm.
may study very hard based on like what techniques you've developed to get a good grade. And if you use that as a proxy for your like performance towards like getting towards your goals, then it might be a good thing.
Hmm.
But I think, as you probably know, that's something like an insufficient priority because the effort to get the best grade, well, it doesn't reflect how much of that information you'll retain. Like it doesn't reflect whether you'll be able to actually use that information. It doesn't reflect like how much you're actually learning and whether you can like take care of yourself or like if it's sustainable. So there's
Hmm.
a lot of reasons why like that isn't going to be the highest priority, right?
Mm.
So if you start prioritizing around something else, around, well, let's say you have a set of residency spots
Mm.
or residency positions in like maybe two or three specialties that you're interested in, and then maybe you could hone the focus more on, well, which of this information may be like the highest yield. I love
Mm.
that.
Yeah, I
um,
love that too.
Highest yield. I don't love it. It's just funny because it's a like a med school meme term.
Right.
Yeah, but which is the highest yield um, towards those endeavors. And like obviously it's not going to be immediately obvious what's the most pertinent and important,
Mm.
but I think you get a good sense by like maybe having some experiences in those like clinical situations or talking
Mm.
to people in those professions, seeing what are the most important elements of what you need to learn and retain,
Mm.
and how you might get that from your 2 years of pre-clerkship education.
Mm.
So that might be a priority. I don't know like what factors exactly, how much the grades factor into residency spots and things like that. My guess
Right.
is that not much, but still influential. Um,
Mm.
Another priority might be like, what is the minimum amount of work I can do whilst also satisfying those requirements, right? So
Mm.
like there's a number of like, it's really complicated because if you want to organize and learn the facts like in your own way, in a way that's most fruitful to your goals, you have to
Mm.
know like you have to set a hierarchy of your goals. To set a hierarchy of your goals, like you have to know like what you value most and what you want
Right.
most out of your life. And if you ask anyone to do that like on the spot, like they're not going to be able to do that. That's such a difficult question.
Yeah.
It's like, what should you be aiming towards? Like, and there's a
Mm.
pretty good like number of approximate ones that you could like set up. Like one is to like become a good physician, like
Mm.
a competent good physician. Like what does that entail? It
Mm.
probably doesn't entail like you getting 100% on all your assessments. There's, so you may want to focus on like soft skills, but also like practical clinical knowledge, and um, or maybe another priority is like learning how to learn or learning how to prioritize information. That might be another goal that like drives
Mm.
you. Or there may be more practical goals like how do I get into this residency spot, at this school or like this hospital that I want to go to. And like I've been struggling with that prioritization process as well, especially because it that like decides everything, like all your actions, what you choose to get involved in. And I do think I've actually written about what I'd like my priorities to be.
Okay.
So let me try to get
I want to jump in there while you do your searching, I guess. It seems to me like the best prioritization scheme is one that includes as many variables as possible. So you started by saying, it's probably not a good idea for you to be trying to just get the highest mark, because what real use is that? And I think actually on the transcript that is sent from our university, it just says pass fail. It doesn't say what percentage you get. So if you just make the cut, you're good. And even our dean said on our first day, focus on other things as well. So I do think that the prioritization scheme should include other things like observerships, as you mentioned, clinical experience, maybe even like things like family or well-being, peers, having a good social circle and things like that. And that's something, I think a lot of undergrads forget. And I think it's almost trained in us in undergrad, maybe, especially pre-med, to think, okay, we should really focus on grades, or we should really focus on these sets of priorities that are important to get into our programs. But they're not very helpful, and they're not healthy in a sense, because they don't account for all these other priorities that are also important. So maybe the model here is then to take a step back and look at all these things simultaneously, and to consider what is actually important, and maybe use minimum necessary force needed to succeed in the way that you want.
And what I thought about was, like, while you were saying that, was kind of need your priorities to synergize and work well with each other, right? Like like taking care of your health is taking care of your health, like that's an important priority because it feeds into like every single aspect of what you do. So keeping sane, like having a good social like circle, having good like routines, food, and like your body, like those are the kind of the basic elements, kind of the grounds that like seeps its way into every other goal and priority that you'll set. And such a narrow like priority, like getting 100% on all my tests, might not necessarily like work so well with other goals, like the one you need for your body, or the one to become like a good, competent physician. And I think that like once you start to establish a good set of, let's say, synergizing priorities, and you can extract out the like the underlying pattern from within that, like I don't know, maybe the higher like priority that you derive from that is to have a like meaningful life. And I think we said this at some time before. I forgot when. Maybe it was another Footnotes podcast where you explicitly said something along those lines. But like when you have higher order principles, like the higher order priorities, like the other ones kind of organize themselves, and they kind of submit to the higher order priority. Massive pyramid scheme.
So maybe it'd be a good idea for me to start writing again, or at least get down those priorities and work on them. Are you still searching? Can I move on to something else?
I've found it, but like we can also move on.
Well, if you want to do a quick note on it, then
like I have a note from I think 3 days ago. The note title is "Orienting My Name," and I think that I wrote this after the like first anatomy lab and being inundated with like so much information about the respiratory system, like the anatomy of like your vocal cords and like your entire respiratory tract. It was like, okay, dude, like Yeah, you're drinking out of a fire hose, and like if you drink all of it, you're gonna die. So you need to be kind of strategic about your aim and what you want to accomplish. So the three kind of like approximate list of priorities that I thought of was to first narrow on a specialty or a field of work that you would like.
Mm,
Second, like maybe the second priority was learning how to learn a lot fast and being able to recall, retrieve / relay that information. So that's
mhm,
another kind of goal for my education. The third one is like developing the character / skills necessary to become like a great physician. So that has to do with like professionalism, ethics, but also communication and tying back to learning and things like that. So those are kind of the approximate priorities I would use to um, narrow down what I need to learn. So right
mhm.
now the formula seems to be something like I would need a good enough like general, but also like pretty specific grasp of
Mm.
like most of the information. Like I would be using that during clerkship. Like you don't want to be kind of a useless medical student during your rotations that doesn't
No.
remember know anything, like because you can be of some kind of consequence
Mhm,
in those situations. Um, and like doing that, engaging in that process will also help me to learn a lot, but in like a strategic way. But like all that being said, like you should still try to focus in on and make connections with a kind of main goal that you're like striving towards, like your specialty,
mhm.
and maybe prioritize the clinical knowledge that's going to be associated with that. But the thing is, like you can't be sure, like what is going to be relevant and what isn't. Like
Right.
who's to say that like my knowledge of the respiratory system might come in handy when there's a
Mhm.
psych patient who has like asthma too, and like that sets off like a lot of panic attacks. I don't know. There are so many cases in which like different connections and different a wealth of like information and knowledge about the human body, especially, like
Mhm.
can come in handy, like no matter what your goal is.
Right. So again, this is like it's better to do something than to not do anything at all. And just to make a good approximation is fine. Um, so I like that. Like you just learn what you want to learn,
Yeah,
learn what you value, and then if
but
it comes
also
in handy, it comes in handy.
learn what you want to learn, but also practice learning the things that you don't think are like quite as relevant,
Right.
like for the sake of learning, like for getting better, and because you don't know what you're going to need to know.
Right.
So it's a balanced approach.
Right.
Yeah,
There's no perfect way to do it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That was approximately my priorities.
Hmm. That takes some stress off, doesn't it? It really does. I don't know. I feel more comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. Once you do that, you can you can orient yourself better.
Mm.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've been playing around with that I thought would help me is routine.
Mhm.
And God, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about routine because
Yeah.
here's my paradox with routine. I think it helps me a lot. I think it keeps me stable and balanced.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it can be very, very boring. And I don't know if it's because I just haven't grown up or matured yet. Um, but I if I have to wake up at the same time and do the same thing every morning and make the same breakfast or something
Yeah.
and go to class and then do the same thing over and over again, I think I would just die. I would just wither and die. Like
Yeah.
it's like I don't have time to express myself or do what I innately feel like doing because I have to commit to this artificial schedule. um, but it's so helpful at the same time. So I don't know. I especially felt that this week because from Monday to Friday, or I guess Tuesday to Friday, I was trying to establish a routine for myself. And then I went on the Windsor weekend to go party and things like that. And I felt so much better once I was out of that routine, which is ironic because you would think I would feel a lot healthier and a lot better in that routine. But I guess it's not so straightforward, is it?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, the main thought that I was having was like, is it possible to make the routine slightly more enjoyable for you?
I don't know because apart maybe I need to schedule in spontaneous time. Like I would spend like an hour after lunch or something to do whatever my mind and body desired,
Uh-huh.
and that would be the thing I do for that hour. Um,
Well, I think like the purpose of a routine is to engage in some of the things that your mind and body require and or like during regular intervals, right?
mm,
Like it would be great like if you could set up your routine such that like you actually kind of like the hour that you get up, if it's possible.
right.
Um, that you kind of like going to the shower and
Mm,
I don't know, maybe there's a kind of like music you play or like a TV show you turn
right.
on like
Mm,
um, I don't know. I do have a routine myself and I
okay.
generally like following it. Like I don't follow it all the time because there's exceptions like a random weekend or
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. Can you make it more enjoyable?
I can try. Maybe the idea is okay, so for example, the food I eat every morning,
Yeah.
I don't love it. It's
Yeah.
very dry food.
Uh-huh.
Um, but theoretically it's healthy. Theoretically it's good for me. Um, so maybe I can add a little more condiment, a little more spice,
Yeah.
and things like that, just to spice things up. Maybe, like you said, like I this weekend actually, when I was in the hotel, I put on music while I was showering for the first time in like 2 years,
Yeah.
and it was so enjoyable. I don't, wow, the simple things, right? And I get to like sing along to it, and like my roommates are out there, but I don't care. Um, yeah, maybe I need to experiment a bit more. Maybe the myth of routine is that you have to do the same thing all the time, or that you have to commit to it. Maybe it's something that I have to keep working on it and doing things with. So yeah.
Yeah. I think yeah, I, like the best way that like habits and routines form is because is if you do something regularly that's useful and like enjoyable, right? Like
Mm,
I think it's very difficult to hammer in a routine that you genuinely don't like doing.
right.
There's there you need more energy, more activation energy to get yourself over that dislike hump. And
Yeah.
I think being like a little bit looser on the structure of the routine or like what that entails, like
Mm,
yeah, adding condiments, like that's a very small change that could very well like just change a lot about because then I don't know, you might actually enjoy the eggs you eat in the morning instead of well, to you have to balance that with your other health priorities.
right.
But like, come on, ketchup in the morning, like it's such a simple like I think you can let go on that.
Right.
You can be a little less rigid with or
Mm,
tyrannical on yourself and
mm.
let yourself enjoy those like little things. Like I really enjoyed like making a morning coffee and like I make a morning butter coffee.
Yeah, you still do that.
Yeah, I still do that, and I love the smell of coffee. Like I love the kind of buttery, frothy like taste
Mm,
of coffee, and that kind of wakes me up. And
mm,
I'll try to turn music on if I can. Yeah, I think there's small changes that you can make that will make your routines more enjoyable and therefore more sustainable.
mm. That's the key. That's the ticket. Right. Um, I didn't really have anything else.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Did you want to? Is there another footnote that you were interested in sharing?
I think I covered everything.
Yeah, cool. These might get shorter every week. We're both tired here, and we're struggling a bit. I think we did pretty good in getting engaged, but hopefully the listeners at home also took something out of this. So yeah, to close off, thank you for listening. Thank you, June, for sharing. Thank you for always being here. And I guess we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.